Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning out there. I was trying to up our guest for the show this morning. Was almost finished with what I was sharing her, but we will be fine. Good morning to those of you out there in Blog Talk Radio Land and Rainbow Soul and the many ways that people catch off the shelf. I want to thank all of you for joining us here this morning. Before we go into introducing you to this amazing guest, and you can learn more about her book publishing, and how maybe you can avail yourself as an author of working with her company. Let me just leave this thought, and I started this several months ago, and this is from Les Brown, this quote, and it is, no matter what happens, no matter how far you seem to be away from where you want to be, never stop believing that you will somehow make it. That is really something in the roller coasters, up and downs of life in this world to keep in mind. No matter what happens, no matter how far you seem to be away from where you want to be, never stop believing that you will somehow make it. And yes, my friend, you are listening to the Winning Book Radio Show Off the Shelf, where that's the spirit we move in. No matter what happens, no matter how far away you seem to be away from where you want to be, never stop believing that you will somehow make it. Welcome to this Saturday, October the 19th show, and thank you for joining us, especially our loyal listeners who have been with us for 14 years. We're heading into 15 years, you guys, 15 years. So my off-the-shelf listeners, I asked you, how good of a mystery sleuth are you? Do you think you can finger the person who's responsible for the murder mystery that cloaks Raymond and his friend's life? Now, I tell you, Raymond is his scene when it starts out. There is a complicated father-son relationship. His father has untreated alcoholism, but he raised him by himself. He could have walked off and left him, but he didn't. So it's something, if you read the story, people start out hating his father, but by the end of the story, hopefully, you can see how relationships evolve. There's also a soulmate relationship between Raymond and Brenda that I hope stays with you forever when you see their journey, and what a journey they have. And there are these four friends, Raymond and his four friends, and they come from different parts of the United States. One is from Italy. They come from other countries. But this bond that they have, nothing can break it. And these men go on to do some incredible things. One goes on, uses his college football, and he makes it in the NFL. Raymond is on his way to the Olympics. I mean, they are academically, sports, they are really, really moving in a good direction. But something happens when Raymond first gets to college. He witnesses a murder, but he's not involved in it at all, so he thinks. Then he meets one of his lifetime friends who is involved. So do you think you can figure out this murder mystery before it's revealed in the book? And then if you value relationships, I really encourage you to get a copy of Love Pour Over Me. This is not a traditional romance at all. This is deep relationships, complicated, but hopefully will leave you changed, especially as you look at your own relationships. Again, you value mystery, you value relationships, not just a romantic relationship, but a relationship between friends and this complicated relationship between a father and a son. I encourage you to stop what you're doing and get a copy of Love Pour Over Me right now. I wouldn't even wait. And you can get it in ebook and in print format. Love Pour Over Me by Denise Turney. And let me know how you enjoy the book. Thank you in advance. And now let us go and meet our very special off-the-shelf guest. And our special off-the-shelf guest this morning is Dr. Norma McLauchlin. Norma is a minister, book publisher, and co-pastor of New Life Bible Church and New Life Christian Academy. She is the chairwoman of Norma McLauchlin Ministries. She's an Army veteran and former teacher, and she has taught on Navajo Indian Reservation in Dilkon, Arizona. She has earned degrees from Fayetteville State, Virginia Tech, and Central Michigan. She got her doctorate degree from North Carolina State. Now, when she retired from Fayetteville State University, she was serving as Associate Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs. I worked in academic affairs at the College of New Jersey, so that some some understanding of some of the work that's similar that she may have done. Norma was also the first African American to integrate Wentworth High School, and experience that had her see the just unimaginably ugly side of racism. I encourage you to visit Norma online at chosenpen.com. CHOSENPEN.com. And hopefully she'll correct me if I'm wrong. CHOSENPEN.com. You can go over there now as you listen to her feature interview and learn more about her, what got her to where she is now. How did she get here? And what her company, Chosen Pen, is doing, and how you might be able to get published through Chosen Pen. And we're absolutely delighted to have Norma with us this morning on Off the Shelf. Welcome to Off the Shelf, Norma.
Good morning. Good morning. And thank you so much for having me and that wonderful introduction.
We are delighted to have. It's chosenpen.com, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I
it
just want to
started
make sure
out
I'm
as
giving.
Chose because, yes, but it was a misprint, so it is Chosen, CHOSEN.
Okay. I want to make sure we have that correct. Chosen Pen, so our listeners can hop over there and visit you as they enjoy today's show. Now, the first few questions I'm going to ask you, Norma, I ask every guest who comes on Off the Shelf because our listeners wanted to get a little backstory on the guest before I launched into the questions. So, to kick off today's show, could you please tell Off the Shelf listeners where you grew up and what life was like for you growing up?
Well, I grew up in a little town, Reedsville, North Carolina, which is north of Greensboro, and I was a child of a Baptist minister, Baptist deacon, and we farmed. Fortunately, I was a child whose parents owned their own land, owned their own home. All of my grandparents and all of us did at that time, which was very unusual for families such as ours in our particular area in our county. But I worked very hard and very diligently. I helped with tobacco. I plowed behind a mule. I drove a tractor. I fed hogs. I planted gardens. I did everything from the time that I can remember, from age 6, of age 3 or 4 to 6 through 18 when I left the Army to join the Army after high school. So my life was one of work, which was a strong work ethic. I did many jobs in order to provide for myself. I was a very, very independent person, individual, and always wanted to have my own monies and my own things.
Oh my God! How old were you when you started? How old did you say you were when you started working on your family farm? Did you say 3?
I was probably 3 when we first started working. My parents also had secular jobs outside of the home. So my first memory is helping my father chop wood, and we had this old wood cutting machine we called jalopy, and we would go in the woods because during the day he worked at night, so during the day I would help him go into the woods to gather wood to cut, and then we would take that wood throughout the neighborhood and sell it. And since I was always with him at that time, he would allow me to collect the money. So that was my first memory of actually working. And then from age 6, I would walk up and down the street in our neighborhood with a lawnmower and ask people if they wanted their yard mowed in the summer. And in the winter, I would ask them if they wanted their bathrooms cleaned or if I could help clean their houses or whatever. So I usually made all of my money. I was always, as I said, very independent. Although my father had a farm and he worked, I always wanted my own money. I considered that his money, but I wanted my money.
Look at you. And good for you. So when you were a kid, you farming, you doing all this work, what did you dream of becoming? What did you say, when I grow up, this is what I'm going to be?
Well, I'm a visionary. Even at that age, I was a visionary, and I had so many visions of things that I wanted to do. I know I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to see all the things that I read about in books. I was an avid reader. I was up at night reading books just like most children, I suppose. But I wanted to see those things as far as a profession. I really don't remember having a profession. All I remember is I wanted to have money, and I would work for whatever I needed to work for in order to get that money. So I had no big vision of becoming somebody. I just wanted to provide a service or produce something that would help others while helping me. If that makes any sense at all.
Yes. Now, can you tell us, I was doing the research, and so many things jumped out at me. I was like, wow. Where is Wentworth High School, and why were you chosen to integrate that school?
Wentworth High School is in Rockingham County. I was chosen because in high school, in elementary school, I guess not only elementary school, but my parents were fervent NAACP workers, and they did a lot in the community. At that time, it was a big uproar about integration. And our leaders, our NAACP leaders, came and talked to my parents about needing someone, because that the big issue that year in 1965 was to integrate the high school. And they had heard that, and I guess my girlfriend, she was having problems at school, and people wanting to fight her. I guess bullying was going on then, even although I had no concept of that. But on the phone that night, I told her that we were, and this is crazy now, but that we're too smart to fight, that we weren't going to mess up our bodies and our skin by fighting, that we were smart. We're going to use our brains to fight and our words to fight. And she went back and told her dad that we were not going to physically fight. We were going to mentally fight. And based on that, some kind of way that got out into our community. And my thoughts are that I was chosen based on that conversation, that I would not be the person that would go to school and cause a big uproar. I would not be one that would be there fighting, physically fighting, but that I could go and resist the urges to combat what they had done.
Now, why did you leave lunch to the...
I was a Jewish... Excuse me?
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Okay. No, I was just going to say, because even with that, I was a member, I was the president of our little NAACP formation there at our school, in elementary school, and I was a leader in the 4-H club and a lot of different activities that I participated in.
Why did you
Plus, I made good grades. I was a straight A student, so.
And why did you eat lunch? Go ahead.
Why did I eat lunch? With,
no, in a janitor. I was researching for your and I said, oh my goodness.
Well, that was the only place that I had that I could have a friend to talk to, that I had any peace. I wasn't welcome at the table with. There was no one else for me to eat lunch with. I never made friends to even go in to the cafe. When I went in the first time, everyone just kind of stared at me. No one offered an opportunity for me to sit with them to have lunch, or either I had to eat lunch alone. So, but the janitor and his wife at that time were always there for me. If they would see me, they would ask how I'm doing. And I would go at lunchtime. I would join them. They were having lunch as well in their little closet, which was probably about a 3x6. It probably wasn't big enough for all of us to be in it, but we were all in there. And that's where I would have my lunch every day. And talk to them and work. You know, they would talk to me, encourage me to keep going, not to give up. And we talk about why I was there. Not about, because it was not about me. I'm not there for them. I mean, for myself, but for my people and for those people who are coming on behind us. My strong belief at that time was that I was doing good so that our people could have a better education, that we would be on equal grounds with the other people in other races. I don't believe that now, but at that time I did. I was a strong follower of Martin Luther King and trying to have equality with others.
Wow, what a story. Oh, my goodness.
So
I was going to ask you, did any teachers or guidance counselors try to help you? I'm like reading this, and I'm like, wait a minute.
Well, it's not that the teachers were all not trying to help. It was probably one of those passive kind of things that you feel, no one is actually helping you. But, they were not being very openly rude to you, the teachers. My senior year there, which we had other students there by then, and I did have some black friends, we had our first black teacher at that school. And that was such a ray of hope and light. Although it was the same year that other things happened, but I just, you just suck it up and do what you had to do. I would go to school every day and do that. And the story that I wrote that you're probably reading from now is the first time I've written about that, the first time I've even talked about my experience there. My parents have no idea or had no idea of what I was going through and the pain and the anguish. As I said, I tried to quit one time and had my conversation with God about that. And he said, I've chosen you, no physical harm is coming to you, and you will be fine. And so I continued at that time. That was in about the middle of my 9th grade year when I was going to quit and go back to the predominantly black high school, or the all-black high school at that time.
Oh, my
but
God.
I did not, and I
wow. You, that story alone. Now, what did you get your degree in when you've done so much? What did you get your degree in at North Carolina State, and what attracted you to that major?
North Carolina State, my degree is in higher ed administration, and of course, because that's what I was working in at the time, higher ed, and so that's why I chose that particular field. My field has always been in business, undergrad and grad. I have business administration, MBA from Virginia Tech, and my doctorate from North Carolina State, which is higher ed administration. As I said, I chose that because the courses that I would take in that were similar to or gave me the opportunities to do what I wanted to do in higher ed. That led you to vice chancellor, associate vice chancellor, and moving on up in that field, in that level.
Wow, impressive. Now, is writing the most, you've done so much. You Army veteran, your educational background, and now, launching your own book publishing firm. When you look back, is writing the most satisfying career that you've had? Like when you compare it to the military and serving as an associate vice chancellor of academic affairs at Fayetteville State University. And if so, what makes it the most satisfying?
The most satisfying thing about being a publisher is that it's mine. I own it. I can do what I want with it. It's the entrepreneurial spirit that I think I fought to find all of my life. With work, doing so many different things and always wanting my own money. Now, although I'm married, I have my money. I got my retirement funds and all of that. I have a husband who's very, very supportive with his money as well. I believe that his money is my money. But
okay.
I still have that satisfying feeling that this is mine. This is Norma McLauchlin's business. It's called Chosen 10, but it is still mine. I can take it in whichever level or wherever I want it to go based on what God has called me to do. And I think, again, that is satisfying because God did call me into this particular business. It wasn't one that I chose initially. I said I had retired. I was here at home enjoying life, doing my Bible studies, writing Bible studies, and when I was called, or the burden came to me to start the publishing company. And that burden was simply not for me, but to publish to help other people tell their stories so that others can be healed. And so that's what the publishing piece is all about for me. It's not necessarily to publish books, but there is a greater mission for me behind that. To say I was called by the Holy Spirit into doing that.
Were you in the military when you actually started writing yourself?
No, in the military, I've been a journaler and writer, I suppose, all my life. But there wasn't anything that I would have published or put out there. In retrospect, I probably would have now, but I didn't know any better at the time. That was something that I wanted to do. Again, as I said, I was in the military. I went to the military right out of high school, giving up scholarships and all of that to colleges. But again, it was, I've got to go. I've got to get away. I've got to go make something of myself. 4 more years, I'm still dependent on someone else, my dad, the school, or somebody. And that wasn't what I wanted to do. And I was ready to get out of Wentworth, North Carolina. I told my parents, I've done all I need to do here. It's time for me to go. So
I never even heard of it. Is it small? Like, have you ever been to, like, Chattanooga, or I'm trying to think of another town that's not a real big town. Well, how would you – I've never even heard of that. How would you is it like 5,000 people?
So small. Oh, well, it may be more. Well, no, in the city it may not be very much more than that, because I lived out in the county. Because the high school in the city was Reedsville High School, but what we had was the county high school. It is so small. My graduating class from there was only 40-some people.
Whoa.
So Wentworth High was the county school, but it was still very small. That tells you how small the county really is. And
wow, 40.
Yeah. But I rode past that school I rode past it every day when I was in elementary school. I rode past that school every day going to my elementary school, Lincoln Elementary. So,
Can you tell off-the-shelf listeners about the 2 books that you authored? You know, you were inspired to start the publishing company to publish other people's books to help people heal. But can you tell us about, give us an overview of the books that you yourself have penned?
All right. The first one that I wrote, which is Free to Choose Worthiness, is the book that I wrote. Well, it's really a spiritual growth book that I wrote based on the Holy Spirit giving to me on the day that He called me to publish books. I was in a Bible study that night with my ladies, and I had been talking back and forth to the Holy Spirit that I'm not going to publish, I'm not going to write, this is not what I'm going to do. And that night, He showed me, the ladies at my table came up as a book. And then on those faces were the titles of books. So the first book I penned based on that was a spiritual growth book entitled Free to Choose Worthiness. And each of those titles is a chapter within that book, which is Free to Choose Salvation, Free to Choose Forgiveness, Free to Choose Worthiness, Free to Choose to be a child of God. And that's the very first book, and it had a journal that went along with it. It was a very successful book at the time. I used it to write Bible studies and to do Bible studies. I probably did over 100 and some Bible studies based on that book alone, and served over 100 and maybe 200 women in different studies based on that book. After that, the next book that I did which was much later, I did several other Bible studies or devotionals on Free to Choose to Write. And it's like my last ones, of course, was my anthology that I just finished last year, or this year, beginning of the year, is I've Got to Write. It's like fire shut up in my bones. And that one is based on the ladies that are around that group, and they're actually telling their stories. And which I was very, very excited about, because I felt like I've actually done what God had asked me to do when I published that book.
Now, how did you find the writers for the anthology, I've Got to Write, It's Like Fire Shut Up in My Bones? How did you go out and find the writers who contributed to this anthology?
The writers who contributed to the anthology are the same writers who sat around my table at Bible studies. They're the ones that, most of them were there when God told me they have stories that needs to be told. And they told their stories, and the fascinating part about this is their stories is creative nonfiction. So it reads like a story, but it is a healing piece for them because their story is within that. And it's amazing that they were able to write these stories because they've never written before. So we also had Chosen Pen Writers Group that came out of that. So we would meet weekly to learn the strategies and the concepts and the things that they needed to know how to actually write. And so a lot of these pieces that have come together, when I look back on them, it's quite amazing. It had to be a God thing. in order for a lot of this to have happened. Because now we're working on Free to Choose Forgiveness with some of those same writers, plus a few more. That's an anthology that should be out by the end of the year as well.
And how many stories are in I've Got to Write? It's like fire shut up in my bones. And is there a central theme to it? Is it around writing, or is it that I have to tell my story? It's like fire shut up in my bones.
It's 6 stories and 3 poems, and I've got to tell my story, but a lot of people think that it's a person telling their autobiography or something, but it's really, as I said, it's not written that way. It's taking the facts of their story and turning it into a nonfiction story. That's why it's called creative nonfiction. It's actually taking the story or taking what has happened to them. Probably the only one that's not creative nonfiction that way is my story. My story is more of an autobiography that's in there. But others are like one of the ladies who wrote on, let's see here. Her story is about getting married back in the day, tying the knot, and what she went through with doing that back in the 70s, and how she actually found a person and things that happened with her throughout that. But it's told in a story format.
Okay.
And so you really don't know that it is her that she's doing that. And another story, The Invitation by Nicole Smith, is a story about her and her divorce and things that happened trying to get a mate during that time, but she wrote it in a creative nonfiction. So it's not, you don't really know that it's her. I know that it's her story, but she's telling her story, and she's healing. The healing part of that came for each of them was probably a surprise for me, because I always thought that we were writing these stories for someone else's healing, but I think all of us were healed from the stories that we wrote, even then. Do
you think that is sometimes when we are all writers, or some people painters, different fields, it is not just for others, but we are, and to our own surprise or unawareness, maybe if we were aware it wouldn't be as effective, but it's actually for us, as we write or create, we're working through something. We're actually working through something, and we don't know it. So that might make it the most effective, because we don't pump the brakes. We just think, oh, I'm just creating this novel, or you might actually be working through something, but you don't know it.
Yes.
Now,
you don't know it. Yes. And I agree. I agree, because sometimes when we were reading in our groups, some of us would break down in tears if we were reading parts of our stories. Or I don't know where that came from, but as I said, the healing was taking place. Yes.
Now, you told us why you launched Chosen Pen Publishing Company, but before we go into that, I wanted to ask you, because I served in the Navy. How was that transition? In case we have listeners who served in the military and maybe they're still in, and they're in the process of transitioning back into the civilian world. Just to leave them some tips or advice, because a lot of veterans struggle, and it's sad when I don't think veterans get enough support, even if they don't have mental health or financial issues, but just even making that shift. It's so different, the military from civilian world. It's so different. At least I found it to be. Sometimes it can be a struggle just transitioning back into the civilian world. Can you tell us, like for you, what it was like when you were serving in the Army, and how was that transition for you coming back into the civilian world?
Well, I'm an old soldier, so I went into the Women's Army Corps back in 1969, and in 1972 I think is when it became part of the Army, regular Army. But that experience for me, and I really don't talk about it a lot, but it was probably one of the best experiences that I've had. I went in not knowing anything, had absolutely no expectations other than leaving Reedsville, North Carolina. I chose the Army because it was the first departure date that I could choose. After my test, I had all the branches of the military trying to get me to join them. but I was one of the highest scores that they had at the time. But as I said, I chose the Army because I graduated May 31st, I think, and they took me in June 26th. But I went in as a telecommunications specialist. It was wonderful for me because it wasn't a segregated Army, but I still found friends. And it's sad to say, but I was so happy to have black friends. And that's where I started to develop friendships, a lot of friendships with them that I still have today. And so from that, in basic training, I was a leader. I was chosen as a leader. So I really didn't have a lot of the issues that some of them had. As I said, I was happy to be there. My duty station was in Fort Ritchie, Maryland, which is a little place nobody's probably never heard of. Matter of fact, the post is even closed now. But at the time, it was the underground Pentagon. It was where they brought the president to stay in case of national disasters or wars or whatever, as now when he goes up on the plane. So my experience with that was very. I mean, I had very good experiences. I met my husband there as well, but I can't say the part when I got out of the military. I was only in for 2.5 years. I said I joined the Army to see the world, fell in love, got married, and got out.
Okay. Okay. So but did you have? Was it easy for you transitioning back?
Yes, it was. When I got out, I had in my little town of Reedsville. I came back to Reedsville, and I had lots of people offering me jobs. There, they weren't great jobs because at the time I hadn't even gone to school. I was right out of high school, but I had people who offered all sorts of different jobs. But my biggest difficulty in finding jobs was I got married shortly after that and came to Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is where my husband is from, Fayetteville, Fort Bragg. And it was not difficult finding a job, but, I thought I was going to be able to find this really high-ranking job. I don't know why I thought that, but I did. And I wasn't able to find the type of job that I wanted. So ultimately, that's when I went back to school during that time. And then we had money from the military. I did all of my education on my military money from undergrad through doctoral school. So
Good for you. Good for you. Good for you. And I'm glad you're trying.
Yeah, so I can't, and we have a lot of people who don't take advantage of what the military has to offer because there are funds for you to go to school, for you to do some other things. And of course, I'm at Fort Bragg, so I can tell you that I do know that there are a lot of people because my church and we always are out trying to give people or help people, especially those who are we're in the military because our church is made up of military people and military retirees, basically. So the desire and the want is there for us to help them in whatever way we can. And there are so many opportunities that people have them to reach out. But again, we have those, with the PTSD and all the mental anguishes that go on with that until they're not always able or capable of getting the things or going to or even understanding what it is that they may need. But
and I appreciate
it is difficult. I'm
yes.
sorry.
No, I appreciate what you do to help your ministry to help people coming out of the military. They serve their country, and today I feel like it's the honor is in word almost only. That people really aren't supported enough when they come, especially if you served in a war. They're not really supported, I don't think, enough. I want to talk about the Chosen Pen Publishing Company. When did you start? We know why the Holy Spirit encouraged you to start it based on your experience, but why? When did you start Chosen Pen Publishing Company?
Well, I guess I would say 2013 because I published my own book at that time. My very first book, I published that myself under Chosen Pen.
Okay.
But I did not. Then I published some of the other ladies' books that's in our group. Also published, I think she had three books, and we all, just down through after 2013, various authors I helped publish, but I'm probably doing a lot more now. And since, I guess, 2017 is when it really came back to fruition and doing things. And I think, again, the Holy Spirit came to me and said, I told you to publish. I didn't say to publish your book, just your story. But although in that book were stories, in my first one were stories from other authors as well. But to publish, there are still people waiting, people who need the stories, people who you are not serving by not publishing other people's books and other people's stories, not necessarily, but their stories. But they always came to me as their stories and not necessarily publishing their books. So since, I guess, about 2017, I've really had the big push to publish and to publish other people's stories and my own stories. In between that time, 2013 and 2017, I was doing some publishing, but not to the degree that I'm really, really pushing it now. Because in 2017 is when I think I found Joy Lynn Ross with her publishing information and started working and reading and studying more about publishing. And so
now,
since that time, I'm sorry, go on.
No, go
Okay.
ahead. You said since that time.
And since that time, I've learned so much about publishing and have been able to assist and to help and have apply what I've learned to other people to get their stories out.
Now, can you tell us about the... I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I want you to finish your statement. You said, and to make sure...
to make sure that my big thing is that God has so many people who are so desperately waiting for those stories that those stories get out to them.
Wow, a lot of times you don't see it that way as a writer, that these stories may need to be told, that they may help somebody more than the writer will ever know. Can you tell us about the process of submitting work? Can you tell us about the process of submitting work to Chosen Pen Publishing Company for listeners who might be interested in working with you? What's that process like?
The first step is go to my website and choose a time. You can go into my schedule, and you have a free consultation that we'll get on there. You can choose a time that's there, and we'll talk about your ideas, your thoughts, and see if what you have fits with what Chosen Pen is about. And from there, we'll start. And if we agree and we agree with each other, I'll tell you to just start writing. If you've already written, then we will start from there and look at what you can submit your document, your manuscript, also there, and we'll look at it and enter into a contract. And after we've looked at it, I'll have an editor look at it, read the first few pages, the first chapter, to look at it and see how much work actually needs to be done, and we'll go from there. But usually we have a process. That's the process that we go through.
How long is that process, and is there any cost involved?
There is a cost after we have the initial conversation. After that, as you can see on my website, we have different offerings, different prices that you can choose, anywhere from $999 all the way up to as high as you want to go, depending on what type of marketing you want to do. And since it's a big burden of mine, and Joylene probably won't want to hear me say that, I do try to work with you on whatever your budget is, because it's so important that if you have a word to get out, that it gets out.
And, yes, and that you're willing to work with people. That is good. What are some of the services, other than what you mentioned? You come in, you submit, you go to your website, chosenpen.com, and then you set up a schedule so that they can meet with you to discuss, what they want to do. I guess the type of book, is it a fit? And then they go through how much editing needs to be done, et cetera. Now, through your Chosen Pen writing groups, what are some of the services that you offer through that? And do you offer any services to writers who don't publish their books through you?
Yes, we have. Matter of fact, I've had quite a few young ladies, or ladies who've come and probably already signed with someone else, But as I say, my whole burden is to get the word out. So if you have a story that God has someone waiting for, I would dare not offer the assistance to help you get that out. As I said, the money is not the object. But for them who I do offer the services, I do workshops on how to write, what you need to do to write. Now I'm working on a workshop right now on dialogue. That seems to be a big problem that we're experiencing with our stories now. The first ones didn't have so much dialogue, but in order for the readers to be engaged in that story, I think we have to learn how to put more dialogue in. So that's something I'm teaching on at our next not our ministers meeting, at our next writers workshop, and for this next group of stories. So I've taught on that. I've taught on how to write, what you need to do to write. I've taught on journaling. Whether you may not want to write a book, you may want to write a journal. So different topics that we do cover. And then if I find within the group that there's a specific topic that needs to be covered, then I'll cover that as well.
Now, is that offered through your consultation services? I was going to ask you about that next. I know you also offer book consultation services. Is that what's included in that? If not, what's included in the book consultation services that you offer?
Okay, the first consultation, I said, that's just to try to get a feeling for you, where you're going, what you want, if you understand what the book publishing process is all about. And then the other consultation services, if you want me to be your literary consultant, I can do that. And that literary consultant can start with you and walk you through the whole process. I've had ladies that I've walked with from day one all the way through marketing. And that depends on what you want and the extent that you want that for that particular service. Anything that you want, that you need, I provide as a literary consultant. I can provide.
So you can tell somebody if the book, doesn't need any, it needs more work structurally, it needs more, like either more line editing or those types of things.
Yeah. Right.
And then do you also offer services?
I have others. I was going to say, because I do have editors and copywriters and all that on my team as well.
And do you also offer services that you look at? I mean, you tell a story because it's a story you want to tell, but every story is not going to sell. It may sell, and I can't, after being in this industry for well over 35 years, that every story is going to find its reader. I've read books that were amazing, but without the right marketing, no one knows it exists, or very few people do. And it can take a ton of marketing a day with so many books out to have your book even be noticed. It can take so much work. Do you, in your consultation services, do you also look at the book and you can, I don't know if nobody knows for sure, but to let the writer know they might want to go back and add or change something to make it more marketable?
Yes, I do, and unfortunately, a lot of people take that advice. Those people who think that God has given it to them and it's the only way it can go, they don't. And unfortunately, sometimes it becomes a coffee table book. But I try to tell people that it's not about you writing this book, but you've got to have an audience to read it. If you're just writing it to be writing it because, now you have a book, then that's fine. But if you're writing this book to reach a particular audience, then there's going to be some changes. There has to be some changes in order to be interesting to your audience. And sometimes people just, have to define who that audience is in order to try to get that point across.
And when you write a book, and I'm glad we're touching on this, when you write a book, I would try to really concept the audience. Unless you're just writing it for yourself and your family and your friends. And you could certainly sell, depending on how big that audience is of your family and your friends, you could sell several hundred books that way. It definitely doesn't. But if you are looking to reach hundreds of people, and I know the average book today, I think self-published sells like 70 copies, and you might have to put in a good deal of work to get that. But if you're looking to reach, I don't know, several hundred or 1,000 people, then you will have to define your audience and you might have to listen to someone else, like a Norma McLauchlin, and really listen. And there's something in the artist that you can push back and no, I'm not making those changes. I'm not. But if again, this might be for somebody who's tuning in today. And can you share any tips from working with other authors, how an author could kind of open up to receiving some insight or guidance and what they could change in a book to maybe make it more marketable when the writer's feet are dug in so hard? You like, you want to sell books? I'm trying to help you. And they have dug in. They have dug in. Is there anything that from your experience that writers can do to just loosen up a little bit to listen to a little bit of guidance?
Well, I think, and I do try to talk to them. I try to talk to them where they are. As a matter of fact, I've been trying to have a conversation that we're talking about it now. I've had this conversation within the last month or so with if you, and again, the question is, where do you want it to sell? Why are you writing the book? Let's get back to the why. If you're writing this book for an audience, I don't care who the audience is. If you're writing it for your church members, you got 50 church members, and this is all you want to sell to, then this is what we'll market. That's fine, because you can probably write what you have now, and you'll have 50 people in your church will probably buy it. If you're writing to a larger audience, if it's a book that you don't want in your church, but you want in all churches throughout the land, then let's talk about how the people in the churches throughout the land will take this book. You may not be able to say that this and talk about, and that was my particular issue, to one particular church. You can't market. If your book is for, say, the Baptist people, then the Baptist Church, Baptist Union, then you're writing to the people of Baptist Union, then that's always going to buy your book. If you are talking to people that you're wanting to draw in to build the kingdom, then you're going to have to either change the name of the book, you've got to go in and make this book readable, you're going to have to put in some dialogue, you're going to have to make it interesting. You just can't write a book of scripture. Let's talk about how you can, what the people need to hear and how you can couch that within a scripture. You have to tell some stories, maybe, but so just, again, what is it that you want to do? Who is it you're trying to reach? And once we come to that decision, usually it's much easier to talk about changes within the book.
Okay.
And then why you did this book? Did you write this book for you, or did you write it to build the kingdom? If you say God gave you this story, God gave you this book, if God gave it to you, he didn't give it to you for you, he gave it to you to build the kingdom. So let's think about it and how you can go about building the kingdom. Because the kingdom, building the kingdom, I mean, we're already saved. We're already in the kingdom. So what can you write to draw people, the unsaved, into the kingdom? If that's what he told you to do. So sometimes it's just kind of a matter of trying to talk to them about the why they're doing it.
Yes.
And
taking them step by step, and not just starting with the end, but step by step by step. Now, do you publish print, and do you publish print or hard copy, digital and audio books? And what's that process like if you do all three?
I do all three, but basically I do them through whichever CreateSpace or any other print company that depends on the size of the print that we need to do. But once we get down to your PDF file or your MIDI files or whatever that you need to decide what you're going to do, then we can decide how you want it done.
Now, does Chosen Pen Publishing help authors with book distribution and book marketing?
Yes, we do. Depending, again, because that can get into an expense. As I say, you have to spend money to make money, but depends on how much you want. But we can help all the way. We have a package, a marketing package, again, of different levels of marketing, from your social media pages all the way up through TV, if that's where you want to put it. And again, how deep your pockets are. and if you think your audience is there, and that's what you want to do with your materials. But yes, we do.
Okay. And then I also want to ask you, can you tell us, when we talk about book marketing, book distribution for those who are maybe new to the book publishing, that's how you get into bookstores, and Ingram is a major book distributor. And I forgot the one who does the libraries, Baker and Taylor, and then you have getting distributed to Amazon and Barnes and Noble and the digital publishing. So those are, when I asked her, she helps with book distribution for all those different connections with Baker and Taylor, connections with Ingram, connections with the digital, getting the book published on different digital book publishing companies.
We put it on all of the different marketing media, from Amazon, Ingram, all of those, yes. Okay.
Now, can you tell us, you started Chosen Pen Book Publishing in 2013. You really ramped it up in 2017. Can you tell us about three key activities that you found to be hard, challenging for writers who you have worked with? Three things about book publishing you've seen present like three of the most major challenges, and how can writers overcome these challenges?
I think the very first thing is, in the writing of the manuscript itself, is not to try just to write that first draft. Most of my writers want to write, edit, and do all that in that first draft, and you never get it written. But as I try to tell them, just write. Put the pen to paper, the fingers to the keyboard, or whatever, and just write. Then that second draft, you can go back and start to doing self-editing. And again, learn self-editing. A lot of them don't know how to do that. There are lots of tools, Grammarly or whatever out there that will help them with that. And learn how to use them. And it takes time and patience to get through that process, but you need to have done it 3 or 4 times yourself prior to sending it to me, to have me send it to a professional editor. Because that helps cut down your cost of editing as well. But first, get it on paper before you try to go back and doing your outline, filling in your gaps, and editing. And don't try to self-edit the first time. The second part is also about editing, and that is choosing the right editor, the right type of editing. And that's your biggest expense is in editing. And so that's why it's so important to do as much as you can yourself at the very beginning of your writing. But choose an editor that will help you, will give you true information back, and not just take your work and do their editorial processes themselves and edit and publish your book. But go through that with a professional editor. They will do that. They will give you feedback, will allow you to make your changes. And usually that's a 3-step process for us, which is a time-consuming. A lot of people don't want to take that time. Once they get it written, they think it's ready to be published, and it's not. I mean, it may be, but nobody's going to buy it because it'll be so full of errors. But that next step, again, I said the editorial process is probably the next biggest step. And then it's the marketing. The book cover, the back cover, having something that is appealing with your title that people will choose. God may have given you that title, you say, but I'm not always sure, because if he did, it would be a catchy title that someone probably would read. So that's just me. But let's try to get something that is a catching, even if you want it. The biggest thing is, will it be in Barnes and Noble? Well, if it's in Barnes and Noble, you want people to look at it, to see it on the end or wherever they pull it out, to be attracted to the book. And the cover is there to pull the eye to the book. The back cover is there for people to read, to want to read what's inside. And so a lot of people sometimes have a few little problems with that and want to put just words on the front or whatever. But that's all part of the good marketing strategy is just that. And from that, looking at the things, your social media pages, a lot of people don't want to do that. And then setting up your business page. This is now a business, and a lot of people don't want to do that. But if you want to make any kind of money, your book is a business, and you have to look at it as that, because the book is probably not going to make you the money that you want. It's the offshoot shoots from that book, the other lines, streams of income that comes from now you being an expert in this field because you've written a book. And that comes with the marketing and getting yourself out there with the pre-launch, the book reveal, book cover reveals, any of those things that we can do to get you into the public eye. Like I'm telling you, we got to show you in something at least 7 to 12 times before anybody's going to remember your name, even still, or your book cover, but if they at least see your cover, and it's an appealing cover and a cover that will draw attention, then people will remember that. I think I've named, I don't know, did I name at least 3?
You definitely did. I thank you. And you know what? You have to get. I interviewed on a big radio show in New Jersey years ago, and I said, "Where are all my book sales?" I'm thinking I'm gonna sell hundreds of books, and that guy he'd been 30 years in it. He said, "Oh, ma'am, you're gonna have to do so many interviews and so many things over and over and over. I don't care how many. If it's 3 million people listening to the show, you're going to have to keep doing it repetitively and consistently before you see those sales kick in. You're not going to do one TV interview or one radio interview and then the floodgates open. Generally, you have to do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over, and then you start to see yourself get some traction. We are coming down to just a few minutes, but I would definitely want to touch on this because I have a blog at my website, and I'm telling you, it is a huge traffic puller. Now, you have a blog at Chosen Pen Publishing. How has blogging for authors who are looking for ways to get their books out there, get more traffic at their website, how has blogging helped to sell your books?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not a very good blogger. I'm trying to do better with that because I tell my writers that they must blog because that draws people to your website. And when I do blog, it's so much more traction. People do come to the website, they read. I'm getting ready to do a big piece now on unforgiveness because that's where my focus is right now. So blogging is very important, and it helps get those short thoughts out there. Again, you can bring them back together at some point in time into a book or into a short story or whatever. But I am remiss in doing a good job of that myself.
I'm telling you, it is a trap.
Today, I'm going to do a better job.
And I would recommend somebody, if you can blog and put a new one up once a week, I'm telling you, watch. And if you promote that blog on your social media sites, and then I also use Outbrain sometimes to help pull in traffic, you'll see the difference. I'm telling you, my blog pulls in a lot more than just my website does by itself. Now, where can off-the-shelf listeners get a copy of your books and of your authors' books, Norma? And can you give us the names of a few of the authors who you have published?
Well, I've published right now. I have 2 authors coming out. Mr. Mixon, James Mixon, his book will be out the end of this year, if not sooner, From the Inside Out. Also, my husband's book, which is, I try to give a plug for as often as I can, which is Your Daily Holy Scope. Instead of Your Daily Horoscope, he has a 365-day book called Your Daily Holy Scope. I have another one of my great authors is one of our she was single. She's gotten married now, Miss Nicole Smith. We've published, I think she's done 6 books under our title, and one of them just came out not recently. She's also in the anthology. So that's been, I guess, my biggest focus this year is trying to get all those out. And again, all the stories that are in the anthology has also been, as I said, was my big focus last year. And working on, I think that we have something like 8 stories in this one. And we have the seasoned writers in this one. I don't know if you remember Sharon U.L. Foster, who used to be one of the first black. Well, she was one of our first black Christian authors. She hasn't written anything now in years, but she has written a story for me for this anthology. As long as Suzetta Perkins. I don't know if you know, she does some mystery writing
Her
as
name
well.
sounds familiar. Yes.
Yes. Okay. She has. Well, she wrote in the other anthology as well, but she has a story in this one. So I try to get some more seasoned writers in the anthology as well, and they are very valuable in giving support and information out to our new writers.
Where can people get copies of these books? Where are these books available?
These books on chosenpen.com, and also at Amazon.
Okay. Oh, we have had. Oh, last thing. Are you on any social media, and where can Off the Shelf listeners find you on social media accounts?
I am on all social media. You can find me at Chosen Pen on Facebook, Chosen Pen Publishing. You can find me on Twitter, Norma McLauchlin. You can find me on Instagram at Norma McLauchlin. And is that it? Those are the three main ones. But most of them are under Norma McLauchlin. And if you want to go into my consulting services, where I do counseling and coaching, you can find me under Chosen Path Transformation.
Okay, Chosen Path Transformation. We have had the absolute pleasure of interviewing and connecting with Dr. Norma McLauchlin, and her last name is spelled McLauchlin. If you want to Google her, Norma McLauchlin, again, it's McLauchlin. But you can just go on over to her website, chosenpen.com, CHOSENPEN.com, and check her out. She's an Army veteran. She's served as she's a former teacher in North Carolina. I mean, that's where a lot of her roots are. And she's also co-pastor of New Life Bible Church and New Life Christian Academy. She's taught on the Navajo Indian Reservation in Dilkon, Arizona. And she served as Associate Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs at Fayetteville State University. So we just have been honored to have her here. We encourage you to support her and the authors who she's published. Again, Chosen Pen Publishing, and the website is CHOSENPEN.com. Thank you to Ms. Norma for her time and all the tips she shared. If you came in midstream, once the show finishes streaming, it'll be up in the archives. You can go back and listen to it in its entirety, and encourage you to share it with other readers, book lovers, and authors who might be interested in finding a way to get published, because they might have a match there with Chosen Pen Publishing. If you listen to it in its entirety, you could hear Norma go through the process of how she does her author selection. So thank you again to Norma, and thank you to our amazing off-the-shelf listeners. As I always tell you, you are incredible, you're phenomenal, you are awesome. Go out and create a fabulous day for yourself. Norma, I'll shoot you an email with a link when the show finishes streaming. Bye for now.
Goodbye. Thank you for having me.